From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today I'll be reviewing the movie The Fury, released in 1978. Starring Kirk Douglas, John Cassavetes, Carrie Snodgrass, and Amy Irving. Directed by Brian De Palma. Genre, drama, thriller. Rating R. Budget, $5.5 million, estimated. My rating is a 9.2. The synopsis is: this film is about the adventures of a man, Peter Sanza, and his desperate search for his son, who has telekinesis, Robin Sanza, being honed as a weapon for a government agency called the Morgue. His only chance of finding his son is a girl with the same powers, Gillian Belliver. My enjoyment: I actually saw this when I was about 8 years old, and I absolutely loved it then. It was very, very, very scary and super, super creepy, but I just enjoyed the story so much. And I think there's a scene in this film where there's an accident with a Ferris wheel, and I believe that scared me to death when I was a kid. And even to this day, I really don't like Ferris wheels and that kind of stuff. The pacing, at an hour and 58 minutes, the pacing is a little old-fashioned. It starts off really, really slow in the beginning to set up the situation and the characters. But by the 48-minute mark, the story really livens up a lot, and it's really, really good. I think all of the slow-moving things in the beginning of the film actually pays off at the end. The story. This movie is an adaptation of a novel released in 1976 by John Ferris, who was also asked to write the screenplay for the film. Since the author has written a whole series of books on the matter. I just love this story. It has a reminiscent flair of many Stephen King novels and films about paranormals. The unique spin on this film is that there are two telekinesis subjects and how they become relative to one another. Robin and Gillian are like psychic twins and are referred to such in the film, uniquely meant to meet at some point in their lives. To me, it's a story with a lot of payoff, and I like it. They get to the science of the telekinesis, and actually I know jack about this stuff, and so I think what they developed for the film science sounds pretty intriguing and kind of makes you want to explore the field a little further. But like I said, I don't know, so they could be really talking a lot of crap. I'm not sure how realistic it is, but it seems pretty plausible to the layman. Brian De Palma directed the film, and maybe it was by accident or on purpose, but it seems as if there are two cops in the film who are possibly named after his best friends. Named Bob for Robert De Niro, and the other is Marty for Martin Scorsese. There is one scene in the film that pays homage to one of Brian's favorite directors, Alfred Hitchcock, and his film Rear Window, released in 1954, where the protagonist falls from a roof. The challenge. Now, the acronym for the secret government agency in this film is the Morgue, and it stands for Multiphasic Operations Research Group. Take notice that the morgue sounds like the place where people are taken when they die. They're a very unscrupulous corporation or agency that will get what they want no matter the cost. The head of the organization is Ben Childress, who used to work with Peter Sanza for 20 years until he double-crossed him, staged his death, and took custody of his son, Robin Sanza. This guy, Ben Childress, is particularly evil, ready to sacrifice his friendship and all else to get a leg up on being the leading edge of telekinesis warfare. And I'm only guessing because it's never really explained. His main motivation for doing what he does is a big mystery. And maybe, just maybe, there's some animosity towards Peter Sanza for being good at what he does too. Maybe he wants to be the best, so he's got to knock out the competition. So that's just, that's me theorizing. There is no hint in the film that that's possible. It doesn't really go into detail about that. When Ben discovers that there's a girl with the same potential as Robin, he really becomes interested in acquiring her as well. So you can even see that he has men surrounding Jillian's school, even posing as a neighborhood runner. Now there's a character here by the name of Dr. Susan Charles that heads up the operation to gather data on Robin and also helps in the process of brainwashing him, as they want to use that in some sort of warfare. There's something about Susan that just screams villainy. She's only a man for hire, if you will, for the morgue. She's just, using all of her powers of conniving, even using her body to get the results that she wants, to perhaps, further along her career. We're not certain about her motivation either. Why she's doing this, we don't know why, but she is doing it. She clearly empathizes with him and acts as a mediator. Of the challenges, the one you really don't expect in the film is actually Robin Sanza. Out of nowhere, we get this sense that he's a real threat and he's a real firecracker. Robin began as a very nice kid who looked up to his father, but since his father's quote-unquote death, he's becoming more and more dangerous, jealous, ill-tempered, and his awareness of his powers are growing. His father could have tempered his childlike tantrums if he was still in his life, but in the hands of his manipulators, he's just a spoiled and angry boy driven into paranoia, and coldly uses his deadly powers on anyone he cares to. He picks his closest confidant, Dr. Susan Charles, to unleash his absolute hate. He taunts her, standing over her, torturing her slowly. It's a very, very creepy scene with lots of cringe, but it's one of the most incredible scenes in the film. For empathy, I had a lot of empathy for the good guys in this film, and that is probably because there was more time devoted to their characters. There was a lot of motivation on their part that we could understand. Whenever Peter Sanza is on screen, you really feel his desperation as he searches for his son and avoids the relentless pursuit of the morgue, complete with funny disguises while meeting interesting characters along the way. He really gets a lead when he organizes a meeting with Gillian Belliver through his girlfriend Hester, who works at Gillian's school. Gillian begins the story as a seemingly average young girl who has some psychic abilities that are more like unexplained coincidences, many of which results in the occasional teasing and bullying by her peers. As the story continues, she gets horrifying glimpses into the past and the future through touch, but when she touches people, that makes them bleed. And this is particularly what makes her dangerous and what makes her unique. According to the movie science, I'm not sure if it's real science, but Gillian actually creates a powerful electromagnetic energy field when she uses her power. Anyone around her will bleed, and the way they described it, she thinks it only happens when she touches them, but she actually doesn't have to touch people in order for her to make people bleed, which is a fascinating little fact. She is taken to a school for paranormal youngsters called Paragon, and this is when she begins to develop a strong telepathic link to Robin. She can see things about his life and what he's going through under the twisted care of the morgue. She develops a friendship with Peter and then vows to help him find his son. I think Gillian also wants to meet Robin because he is the only other person with her abilities. She hopes she can learn from him how to control her powers, and she also feels very lonely and isolated. I really like Gillian because she seems really fragile and weak, but she has a very strong will and a sense of morals until she's pushed too far. I mean, wow, you don't ever want to get this girl on her bad side. Technically, let's talk about the music. Sometimes when the film lacks music or even atmospheric sound, it's missing an immersive effect, so it kind of feels a little flat. John Williams did the score and really called upon the suspense and thrills of the scenes. And it was composed in the style of a famous Bernard Herrmann score from an Alfred Hitchcock movie, Vertigo, released in 1958. Some of the makeup effects and visual effects were dated. There's no doubt about that. But seeing this back in 1978, it absolutely blew my mind. And it looked real then because it was the best at its time. With a little digital color correction and blending, it could really look good again. The in-camera effects were great, like the bleeding hand, the train spinning out of control, and some of the more terrifying scenes with Dr. Susan Charles, and the very last scene at the end with Ben Childress. And I thought that all of the scenes where Gillian is looking into the future, the past, all those cut scenes, I think it was all done wonderfully, and I loved those effects. The pulsating vein from Robin's forehead was a very nice touch. Again, you can see where the makeup starts and ends, but it really gives us a sense that there's a physical reaction to his abilities, sort of like flexing a muscle. And I really enjoyed the direction for the actors. The actors were in synergy with the editing because when people were hurt or died in this film, there was some time given for the characters to react and care. As audience members, we're actually drawn into their emotion. For instance, there's a scene where Peter stops the story to sob for the loss of his girlfriend Hester, and not many films are willing to take that emotional break in the middle of the action. And he just really goes for it. I mean, when I say sob, the guy really sobs, and it breaks my heart every time I start crying as well. Performances. Kirk Douglas was brought into the story as a box office draw, but he helped to really tell this story and let us sense the emotional toll of what his character was going through. There's just an incredible level to the likability in Kirk Douglas's performance that really sells his character. Within a few lines of dialogue, he's able to build this incredible trust. I just thought it was a great performance, and being as physically demanding as it was, Kirk was about 61 years old at the time, and in excellent condition. You can see he's clearly doing a lot of his own stunts, and he's running and jumping around, and it's really inspiring. For her role as the psychic with telepathic powers, Amy Irving attended a biofeedback clinic to learn about psychic correspondences. And she does a fantastic job portraying a person receiving visions and terrified by her powers and how they could hurt others. I thought she did a fantastic job. There were other also very fantastic performances from John Cassavetes, Carrie Snodgrass, Charles Durning. He gave a fantastic performance. Fiona Lewis and Andrew Stevens as Robin Sanza. This was also the film debut for both Daryl Hannah and Jim Belushi. The best part? Well, for me, there's so many memorable scenes in the film, but the one scene I like the most is the scene where Peter and Gillian connect, trusting each other for a brief moment in time, both having gone through so much loss. I mean, I pretty much cry on cue every time I see that scene. The ending, the bad guys are so slimy and unlikable in this film. And you know, when they become victims of their own manipulations, you kind of feel relieved. I mean, they don't go out nicely because it's pretty gory and disgusting. But the film is really a tragedy. It's not a happy ending for Peter or Robin. Some people have even said that it feels short even though it's a 2-hour-long film. They just feel like it's not quite finished yet. There's more of this story to tell. It leaves you with questions about Gillian's future. What's going to happen to her? Her powers are far more dangerous than Robin's ever were, and it seems to be even amped up a bit. So the question is, did Robin transfer his powers to Gillian in their scene together? And I'm leaning towards the fact that possibly he did. My wish list. I wish there was more of a clear motivation laid out for the villains in this film. They just don't seem to have enough gravity to their characters. I mean, they're bad guys, you know it, but exactly what their intention is kind of a mystery, and it makes it seem as if they're really not good villains. Also, I wish that the testing for telekinesis was a little bit more scientific and in-depth, like testing how far Gillian and Robin's powers reach and how heavy of obstacles they can lift with their powers. I think that would have been a fun touch to the film. In summary, I just love this old 70s thriller flick. Some of the effects and style are dated, but I think that the story is solid in my opinion. The film is quite gory, but I must say that all of the gore moments were really meaningful to the story, and so that's why I kind of don't really consider this a horror movie, but more of a thriller. I mean, it does get absolutely just cringeworthy in some scenes, but all of the gore really just worked within the telling of the story. There were a lot of scary moments in the film and a lot of suspense that was built in without jump scares. And so, the chills actually came from a deeper place, like true fear, the stuff that keeps you up at night and makes you wonder about, strange things that you can't control. It's a weird film, to be quite honest. It really has a hybrid feel to it, as if it were a blend of later films that we'd see, like Firestarter, Scanners, The Dead Zone. And perhaps they were all influenced by The Fury, but it's a very, very underrated and nearly forgotten film that I admire. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.